Welcome back to A Better Choice Homestead. My name is Kelly and I'm going to give you a quick tour of the garden here in the beginning of June. Everything is planted, minus one thing that I still have to transplant. But I wanted to show you where we ended up, show you how everything is going, and take a look at the flowers that I put in to bring in the pollinators. So this is the lower section of my garden. I have 6 beds down here and a few containers as well. So we're just going to kind of go bed by bed, take a look at what we've got. In this first bed, we have some tomatillas. We have basil in between the tomatillas. I've got some peppers in here. These are the half-hots that I planted that I started from seed that I got from peppers I sourced at the farmer's market. I've got some eggplants in front, and then this little guy here, this is the zucchini that I planted a couple of weeks ago. He looks great. I've got this tulle netting around him to try to keep the cucumber beetles off of him. I cannot grow zucchini to save my life. We get so many cucumber beetles here that I don't get any fruit. So I'm trying so hard this year to protect them. And I'm going to try 2 different ways this year. So I've got some covered in tulle and some I'm going to cover in some kale and clay. And I'm going to spray that tomorrow. But that is the first bed in the lower garden. Next to that, I have these amazing lemon balm planters. I've got 2 planters here. I've already harvested from this once and did a freeze dry video on that, and it has already bounced back and looks fantastic. Same with the oregano over here. I harvested about half the oregano here. We still have a ton in here. I've got some rosemary growing over here in this one, and I've got some lemon thyme and some regular thyme as well. And these thymes, they look great. Rosemary's coming along a little slower. These are more of the same types of containers. I have 3 containers filled with comfrey. I use this a lot. So first of all, the pollinators absolutely love these flowers, but the leaves can be dried. I freeze dry them. You can dehydrate them. You can hang them to dry. But the leaves can be turned into a salve using some olive oil and some beeswax. And it is a truly phenomenal topical healer. I've actually been using it on my hand here for the last 3 weeks. I got a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree burn on this hand. And the only thing that I did to treat it was use comfrey balm. And I mean, it's still a little red and swollen, but there's not going to be any scarring. And I've got a tan line here because I have been wearing a glove. So I put the comfrey balm on there and then cover it with the glove to keep the sun off of it, which I should have on right now for this tour, but I don't. But this is amazing. And again, the pollinators absolutely love it. They're just such beautiful little flowers. Just to the left of those planters, I stuck 2 planters here, put some extra peppers in there, ran little drips to them from the beds behind me. I have 2 Malabar spinach in there, and then the rest of this planter and the one next to it is purple blauhide beans that'll climb up this trellis here, as well as in the front I have some bush beans as well. And on this fence, I have a kiwi vine. Now, I planted 2 of these and only 1 survived, so I have to decide if I'm going to take this down or if I'm going to plant another one, because from my understanding, they need to be pollinated by a like plant, male and female. So I don't really know how to determine if it's male or female, so I will probably take this down. I'm leery on doing so out the gate, so I'm still thinking about it. And right behind this, here in this bed, another zucchini wrapped in tulle, eggplants, peppers, 2 Roma tomatoes, 2 slicer tomatoes, and then some basils in between. And actually on the outside of this bed, just in the ground here, I've got some more peppers, and that's true in the bed in front of it as well. I just had a lot of pepper plants, not a lot of places to put them, so they went directly in ground. I think that they'll be fine. What I did here when I moved in, this was kind of grass. It was mostly weeds. And I am on a slope. You can probably tell from the picture, which is why I have all the beds running this way instead of this way. So there's just less of an overall tilt in the beds themselves. But it's really hard to grow grass from seed because the seed just washes away when it rains. Plus I have 4 dogs. So what I've done for the last 4 years, every year, is just lay down cardboard. And then on top of that, I put premium triple ground mulch, and it looks beautiful when it's done. And then it biodegrades, and it just really helps build beautiful soil here. And I've been doing that because I don't know what I want to do with the ground space here, both in the garden and just outside the garden, but I wanted to make sure that I had good soil to start with. Have reached out to a couple landscapers this year. Haven't heard back from anybody yet because I really do need some help, some suggestions, and a quote. I tend to do a lot of things myself, and then I end up having to do them over again, or, you know, fix things along the way that I didn't know to think about as I was going along. So I'm hoping to get some help and get that done this year because this is pretty muddy. Beautiful soil, it just gets really muddy. I have a bed with another zucchini covered by tulle. He looks really, really healthy in here. He's doing great. I'm just really hoping to keep the cucumber beetles off. They usually show up about now. That's why I'm going to make sure that I get the rest of the plants sprayed tomorrow. Then I have more basil in between my plum tomato plants here, and then a whole bunch of onions and bunching onions down at the end with a couple of peppers between the onions and the tomatoes. Everything in this bed looks great too. Back here, I've got 2 tomatillo plants. They're actually setting some fruit. So are the ones in that first bed. I had taken off a whole bunch of flowers when I transplanted them. They were just loaded with flowers, and I needed them to do some good root production before they started flowering. but they are starting to put back on some flowers. And then I did mostly more peppers in this bed, but at the front here, I do also have 2 yellow squash plants covered in tulle as well. Actually, that's 3 plants. There's 1, 2, and 3. I know that that is really close together. I follow the square foot gardening guide when it comes to growing and soil. So all of these beds are made with a Mel's mix, and I find that being this close is fine. They're just going to spill out of the beds, and I'm okay with that. And these last 2 beds here, I've got some eggplants on at the head of each of the beds. I've got some more squash plants, zucchini actually, that you know you can see that are planted, and some butternut squash over here. So zucchini, butternut squash, and then I put in here, in this one, I did some melons, and in this bed over here, I did some candy roaster squash, which gets massive. I've grown it before. I absolutely love it. The fruit are ginormous. They're just huge. And then down at the end there, I've got my huckleberries. So let's take a look at those. So these guys are supposed to grow like peppers. I've never had huckleberries before. I've got 2 plants in this one, 1 plant in this one, 2 plants in that one. They're loaded with berries, so I don't know how big they're going to get or how much, you know, if this is it, if they just set this amount of fruit, like a determinate tomato, and that's all we're going to get, but we shall see. It's my first time growing those, and these containers run off of the drip to the last garden bed. And here I have my goji berries. So I had 3 goji berry plants that I grew in containers, and then last year I moved them down here. They didn't do very much. I wanted to give them time to see if they would bounce back, and they did come back this year, or at least 2 of them did. This one has green on it. That one has green on it. This one is just still brown and dry, so he may not have made it, but we'll see what we get from these guys. I've also never had goji berries, but you know, I just threw them down here, and maybe we will be happy with the result. Over here, I've got ground cherries. So I have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 ground cherry plants. I've grown them in these buckets before, and they've done beautifully. So I am expecting them to do well this year too. They're already starting to put on their little lantern papers. And all of these are dripped as well, and they run off of the first lower garden bed. These containers here are my balloon flowers. I started these, I think 4 years ago. I started them in my tall raised birdie. My garden was configured completely different back then. I had the tall birdie at the lower end of the garden, and I just had, just a little area where I put some balloon flower seeds in there, and they produced little flowers, and I thought that they were really cute. And when I rearranged my garden and I moved the birdie up to the top of the garden into my berry area, I dug these up and I stuck them in these 2 planters, and look at the size of these now. They are absolutely enormous. I am going to have to take these out of these planters and get them in the ground, but I'll wait until probably fall before I do that, fall or early spring next year. These are so beautiful when they bloom. I can't wait to show you what that looks like. They bring in a lot of pollinators. They are just so beautiful to look at. In fact, I have a chair right in front of these planters so that as I'm working in the garden and I want to take a break, this is what I get to look at. Right next to the balloon flowers is the bottom bed in my middle garden. And in here I have some dill, I have some onions, some peppers, some eggplants, and some tomatoes. These are my bread and salt tomatoes up there. I trellis them up onto these tomato hooks right here. So once they get tall and look like they're about to flop over, I will just make sure that I grab a tomato clip, one of those strings that's on the hooks, and then they can grow up, and they can grow as tall as they want, and I can even lean them and keep growing them a little bit sideways if needed. And this is the rest of my middle garden area. There's 9 beds in this section here, and they're pretty much rinse and repeat. So I've got tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and then in some of the beds I have some onions, I have some volunteer Swiss chard, I have some volunteer borage as well, and even some volunteer tomatoes from last year, and basil, a lot of basil. And in between each one of these beds I've also planted a tomato. Let me show you that. So just as an example, right here in the ground, in this lovely soil that I told you about, I have a tomato plant because I had extra tomato plants and I didn't want to have to throw them away. And he already has a clip on him, and so he will grow up that string. And here in the first bed in the lower part of the garden, I've got some broccoli. I don't think I'm going to get any broccoli. I mentioned when I planted these that I really wasn't expectatious. It's really hard for me to figure out when the best time to plant is in the spring here. I'm a California native, and these snow-filled winters, even though I've been here for a long time now, I still just struggle figuring out when to put them in. So this was just a trial. I don't think that I'm going to get any vegetable production on that. However, these leaves are amazing. I am going to harvest these. I'm going to blanch them, and then I'm going to freeze dry them, and then I will have some greens put away. And then I will replace these with some collard green starts that I have that I'll transplant in here, hopefully tomorrow. And then standing right where we are, looking up at the house, up at the deck, you can see some of my green stalks up here. And this one over here on the end is loaded with sage that has blossomed. I'll give you a close-up look at that, but it's just lovely, so beautiful. And the other thing you can see here is I have my hanging baskets. I'll show you those as well. So I have petunias in there that I grew from seed. And then just earlier this week, I put some phlox seed in there as well. But my goodness, we had torrential downpour this week, day upon day. I'm gonna put a clip of that here to show you what that was like. So I'm not sure that the seed made it, and I still need to check all of my flowers in the planters. I mean, it was torrential. So I'm gonna show you that video here. This is the last bed in what I call the upper garden. It's where I have all of my celery that I grew from seed. I started that on video this year. I did have carrots planted in here. They didn't make it, so I just put some bush beans in front of those. So we should be seeing some germination on those bush beans here any day now. And then I've already shown the rest of the upper part of this garden, but in this bed I have chives. I harvested most of the blossoms from those chives a week or two ago and did a freeze-dry video on those. I've got some broccoli in here as well. I don't know if you can see, but this is not a tight head of broccoli. This was a sprouting broccoli, but this is, you know, I didn't catch it in time. It went quick. He's not going to be very flavorful now that he's opening up like a flower. So we're just going to concentrate on the leaves. I'll be happy with those. These are yummy looking leaves. And I have a volunteer lettuce down here. So this little guy grew from seed that came out of lettuce because I had it planted here last year. And over here on the side in these orange containers, I have 3 of them. I have put some calendula in the back of the containers and some trailing nasturtiums in the front. So I am really looking forward to the beauty and the pollinators that that's going to bring into the top of this garden. And outside of the garden here, I have a 10-gallon grow bag that I refreshed the soil in this year, and I put one of my tomatoes in. He's getting a little tall. He has one little fruit on him at this point, but I will get him tied up, and he gets watered by this hanging basket here. So this hanging basket is tied into the drip of the bed right here. And so as the water overflows, it goes into the tomato plant. And that's how I water out of the garden. I've got another tomato plant in a 10-gallon bag here, as well as a 10-gallon bag here that are watered from the drips of the hanging baskets that go down the length of the garden here. And all down the length of this cattle panel fence, in between the grow bags with the tomatoes, I have planted zinnia seeds. So a different zinnia flower type in between each one. And I just did that a couple days ago. Hopefully with all the rain that we had, they didn't all wash away, and we will have some spectacular flowers on the outside of this fence to help bring in pollinators. That is one of the #1 tips and tricks that I can recommend to bring bounty and diversity into your garden for overall better production. And just off the stairs to the house, I have this little planted area where I've got peas. I didn't do a lot of peas this year. My plan was to replace them with some pole beans, but they've gotten such a late start, probably because honestly it's been so hot. But I'm just going to let them see what they do. And then a few days ago, earlier this week, I went ahead and planted bush beans in front of them. So we should be seeing the bush beans come up in here any day now as well. In this tall birdie bed, I've got my cucumbers planted on the end. These will go up the trellis here that I have on the back side of this bed. I've got bush beans planted in here. And then of course on the back side, I have my blackberries and my raspberries, and I have another birdie bed right over here that has my strawberries in it. So here's the birdie bed with my strawberries in it. Looks like we've got one that's ready. Fresh picked strawberries are amazing. Back here, I've got my elderberries. I've got some flowers. I'm not sure the name of these flowers down here, but they send up beautiful purple stalks. I'll bring you back and show you those once they bloom. I also have a volunteer hollyhock back here as well. So this is going to be a beautiful explosion of color here soon. And I've got more of those flowers that, that do the purple stalks here. Not sure where I'm going to put those yet. I put them in here in these buckets. Which I tend to do a lot, right? I'll put something in a bucket if I'm not sure what it's going to look like grown up, if I'm going to like it, if I'm going to like the way that it spreads. I'll put it in a bucket to keep it contained. So I still have these 2 buckets to deal with. And on that same token, I did that with this yarrow as well. Yarrow has so many amazing medicinal properties that I really wanted to make sure that I had some yarrow. And so this year I actually planted a whole flat of yarrow. But man, does this stuff spread. I mean, this is going to be a commitment. I keep having, I can see it already, you know, popping up all outside of here. So I need to figure out what I want to do with this, where I want to put it. I definitely want to have yarrow on my property. I just need to figure out where, and then I can get it out of this container. But I don't think I'm going to be transplanting all the starts I did. That's just a lot of yarrow. This was just one plant, and it has completely taken over this container and has spread out onto the ground now as well. So got to figure out where to put this. But it does have pretty flowers. And at the front of that area, I have a really nice hibiscus plant here. It's growing quite close together with the raspberries I have planted here, so I keep having to knock the raspberries back in order to have this pathway. But that's a nice little garden area back here. And I am super excited about these berries this year. They're just going to be loaded with raspberries and blackberries. This area looks kind of like a nightmare right now. This is not inside my garden. This is up against the house. But I do have quite a few hibiscus plants in here, and all around this old AC condenser, I have echinacea planted. I've also got some lavender bergamot in there. I've got some lilies that are done. This is a volunteer calendula that came up, as well as all these guys down here. So these will be flowering here soon. There's just so much going on in here. And again, the soil is just so incredibly nutritious that the weeds really love to grow here. So I am looking for some help. But let's go check out the containers I put together around the pool. So all around the pool, I have a total of 12 containers. So let's just take a quick look. I've got some zinnias in here with some violas and some creeping jenny. So 4 zinnias and then some, you know, purple, lovely little flowers there. And the creeping jenny will, you know, come out and spill out over the containers. And I do have all of these containers dripped with a sprinkler system that works really well. So they get plenty of water as needed. In this container, I put some of those purple stalk flowers that I have over in the garden and in the buckets. And they're just beautiful when they're in bloom. And then I stuck this little cute guy here. I'm seeing a bunch of slugs in here. I'm going to have to take care of those. And over here, I've got some zinnias growing. I've got some coleus, and then more of the creeping jenny. In here, I've got some more zinnias, some daisy type flower, and a sweet potato vine. This thing is getting a little ravaged by bugs, but hopefully he'll hold his own and bounce back. We got creeping jenny in here. We've got this really dark foliage plant here. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but also some petunias back here, and then some zinnias as well. So as the season progresses and these things grow and bloom, this should be beautiful. These look like some sort of an Asian lily, and they are just getting ravaged by bugs as well. So I'm gonna have to look into that, what I can put on here. I'm not seeing any bugs, but the plants are definitely taking a beating. And then I've also got some zinnias back here. This is one of the reasons why, you know, you want to tour your garden if you're not touring mine, right? You want to go out and check your plants and see how they're doing. So I don't know if you can see the holes on those leaves, but this guy's taking a beating. And in here, I've got some Asian lilies. These are going to be so gorgeous. Ah, I see some bugs. Okay. All right, let's take a look at these, see if we can identify them. All right, so maybe these red beetles are the culprit. You can see the holes in the leaves, right, when I get close up like this. So maybe these red beetles are the culprit. I'm gonna have to try to figure out what those are and what my plant needs to withstand these guys. Down here, some more coleus, some more zinnias, and I honestly forget what this is. This is one of the perennials in here. Probably some sort of a lily. And here we have a bunch more zinnias, some coleus, and some creeping jenny. Again, tied into the drip system. Over here, I've got some zinnias here in the back. I've got some of the balloon flowers up front and then some coleus plant here in the side. I think that's going to be absolutely gorgeous when everything grows up. And in this container, we've got some pansies, we've got some creeping jenny, a coleus, and more zinnias. So overall, this is going to look stunning in about a month. And up here, we are on my deck that's off the back of the house that overlooks the pool. I put these planters together. So daisies in the middle and petunias along the outside. And you can see that they've taken quite a beating from that torrential downpour we had this week, but they're starting to bounce back from that. And then in this container here, I've got some more zinnias. I absolutely love zinnias. So those will be growing up and looking really good. And then over here, so when I first moved into this house, I ordered a bunch of garden stuff online, got a free plant. I think that this is a loquat. I think it's a kumquat or a loquat. And I had it in the house for years. It was a little tiny plant. Well, it's gotten quite large now. I mean, it's tall now. So I needed to know if it would survive outside. It says it does. I'm a little leery though because of how cold it gets here, and I have it in a container. But I went ahead and I kept it out this winter and put it out this winter to see if it could hibernate and come back, and it is. I mean, you can see that the stems, all the stems were brown. They have greened back up. We've got some new foliage here. We've also got something that doesn't belong in here. So let me pull that out. So good news for him, he's going to survive. And I did the same thing with my Meyer lemon tree. It was just getting so big to have in the house. Let's take a look at him. So this guy was just getting way too big to have in the house. So I also put him outside and said good luck. And I did not think he was going to make it. He's looked dead up until just about 4 or 5 days ago. He's now sprouting some new growth at the base of the plant. So I am thrilled. So again, this is a Meyer lemon. I don't know if I'm supposed to cut back these branches or if they will green back up. So I'm just leaving it as it is for now. But if you know, please let me know. So here are 3 of my green stalks. On the left, clearly I've got lettuce. It's looking a little ragged. I had been having to ignore that for a few weeks because we had a nest of baby birds in one of the middle tier pockets here. So I wasn't really watering it. I wasn't turning it. I was trying to leave it alone, not drawing attention to it because of the dogs and because Mama was not liking it when I would go over there. In this green stalk here, I've got some kale on the top, and then the rest of the tiers are planted with spinach. And then the green stalk over here on the right, I just put bush green beans in there. So that is going to be all bush green beans. Except there's one little spot right here where I think that is a calendula volunteer. So I left that, and we will see how it does. Over here, I've got a tower that is filled with edamame. My son absolutely loves edamame as a snack. And then over here, I've got a tower of herbs. So we've got the beautiful sage on top. Actually, that's on the second tier. It's flowering with beautiful purple flowers. Above that, I have my cilantro. So it goes cilantro, sage, parsley, tarragon, stevia. I probably have some others in there that I'm forgetting, but it's a beautiful herb planter and still so early in the season. Over here, I've got another comfrey plant. So I just had an extra one and I had space in that planter, so that's where I put it. It does have little beautiful flowers on it, so I'm fine with it being in that container. And then down here on the ground, I have just a big medley of basil. That's the extra basil that I couldn't fit into my garden this year. And I figured I would just leave that there for easy picking for culinary or for teas. So that's all the basil. Well, that's going to do it for this week's garden tour. As you can see, I'm putting a lot of emphasis on flowers, both bringing them in, pre-purchased like this, or allowing the volunteers that have seeded themselves from last year to grow, and also starting some from seed and adding beauty to the garden. You really do want to enjoy your space while you're out in your garden, because let's face it, gardening is hard. So bringing beauty in does help. And it also helps bring the pollinators in so that your plants can grow and produce and you can have an abundant season. So thanks again for joining me. My name is Kelly. You're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I hope you come back and visit again soon.